Well, hello, White Sox fans. It is January 28th. Welcome to another edition of FutureSox. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me tonight is the managing editor of FutureSox, James Fox. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Not too bad. Can't complain. Yeah, a bunch of interesting stuff this week. So, pretty stoked about that. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. The Fangraphs Top 27 was launched this week. We'll get into that. Do you have any particular thing that you wanted to start off on this week?
No, I think the Fangraphs is interesting. I think there was a lot of some of the Chris Getz audio from 670 was interesting. Some of the things Bruce Levine has said have been interesting, followed by our friend Bob Nightingale earlier today. So I do think there's quite a bit of stuff we can get into, and then there's John Schriffen, right? It's going to be tough for people. I think they think people keep saying Michaela Schifrin. That's not who this is.
Yeah, no, that's wrong guy.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start with that. So the White Sox introduced ESPN and Good Morning America's John Schriffen as the new play-by-play voice of TV for the White Sox. He will be joining Steve Stone in the broadcast booth. How do you feel about the choice that was made? We know that it was down to three candidates, Connor McKnight, hometown guy, being one of those three. How did you feel about the decision?
I think it's fine. I think it makes more sense after kind of hearing the guy, right? And you hear that he's biracial, and I know a lot of people don't really care about that, but it is something Jerry Reinsdorf actually does care about. So I kind of saw that and was like, okay. He's like a New York guy, so that's interesting. I mean, Chicago isn't always super kind to outsiders, right? So I think he did a good job of admitting that, right? He's like, yeah, I'm from New York. I want to ingratiate myself to this, but he didn't come in thinking he knew a bunch about the city, which I think is good. He was pretty self-deprecating. I've heard some of his calls. I'm sure he'll be fine. And if he's enough of a homer, most of the fan base will love him, I'm sure. So I think I think it's fine. He probably works cheap, is my guess. So, but he did make it known this is his primary job, which seemed like a big deal for Jerry Reinsdorf and Brooks Boyer this time around.
Yeah, I've heard some calls from him, mostly football stuff. He does have a very excitable thing, but one of the things I don't know if you heard the Parkins and Spiegel interview with him. He says that he likes to make sure that it's a relevant thing so he doesn't lose credibility, which is a nice, a nice thought right now as we're trying to figure out exactly what we're getting. I've heard some XFL calls, heard slam ball. I've heard a couple of other things. I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see how it goes. We'll see. Yeah, I'm optimistic about it. We'll see what happens here. Also, I figure we'll stick with some of the team stuff that happened that got announced this week, which is that SoxFest will be coming back for 2025. Some people think it's a big deal. Some people are kind of just whatever about it. How do you feel about SoxFest coming back finally?
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I thought SoxFest was cool. The couple of years, I didn't really understand SoxFest until I went a couple of years when I got credentialed for FutureSox, and I was still with Sausage Sox at the time. So I went 2 years in a row with a media pass, and it was pretty cool because you can go kind of everywhere. And that was right around when the last time they had it, they had all the prospects around, and we were FutureSox, so it was cool. And I talked to Nick Hostetler for 20 minutes, and Michael Kopech was there with his then fiance, and times were good the last time they had Sox Fest. So I think a lot of people have kind of made the comment that oh, the White Sox are gonna commit to spending next year, and they'll have a stadium announcement. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but I do think it'll be a 20-year anniversary of the '05 team for sure. Like I don't think they're gonna want to be totally embarrassing, right? Like after like another 60-win season and hold SoxFest. So that is one, like maybe, and their payroll. Like I was talking to some buddies earlier today. I mean, if you look at next year's payroll, I mean, like it could be 40 million going into the offseason. So I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf is gonna go on some mega spending spree, but the team should be quite different by then.
Yeah, you would hope. I mean, we've seen, not a whole lot of, we'll see if he opens up the pocketbook. I don't think that he won't because, like you said, the payroll could be very, very low going into next year, depending on who he retains and who he lets go. It'll be interesting for sure. I know that they wanted to get in on the anniversary of the 2005 World Series championship, so I don't know. We'll see. Where it goes. I can't imagine there'll be too much. I have to imagine that most fans will be happy that there is a Sox Fest back and the ability to be able to go and do what the season ticket holders did the other night at the Field Museum and go hang out with some of the players and get your pictures taken with them and all that. So,
yeah, even though some of those, I mean, you look at some of those pictures, you couldn't even convince me some of those guys were actually like White Sox players. It's like, this is just like some random guys that they met at the school, like outside, and they threw White Sox jerseys on them. Like I would have, you could have paid me money to pick some of the guys like out of a lineup, and there's no way I could have done it.
Yeah, I had a friend send me a picture earlier today, and she said, "Is it bad that I don't know who this is?" Looking back on it, it was a picture of her and Jake Eater, and I was like, "Well, yeah, no, I get it, and they showed the picture of some of the guys at a youth center earlier this week, and it was this lineup of guys that had Nicky Lopez and Andrew Benintendi and Paul DeJong. But then there's this other line of guys like kind of in the middle of those guys, and you had Brian Ramos in there, but then there was a bunch of other guys that people were just like, I don't know who any of those people are, and it was Mike Soroka and Jake Eater and Nastrini and a couple of the other guys, and I know who these guys are, but like most people have absolutely no idea who the heck they are. So,
well, I think the biggest standout was Benintendi, right? Because he's so small. Like Benintendi's a tiny person.
Yeah, he's not very large. And then you also had a couple pictures put up of Max Stassi on social media as well, and everybody's like, who is that? Nobody has any idea.
I know, it's interesting. So even like, yeah, it's interesting. So people I think are going to be excited about Sox Fest. I think I tweeted snarkily, like, one of my favorite things about it is that now we don't have to hear like media complain that like they're ducking out from Sox Fest. Because look, I don't know that that's been the whole reason this whole time. Some of it is space, right? Like I don't know. Like they've never been afraid to hear our criticism. They don't care. Like Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't care what we think. Like people are like, oh, he doesn't want to hear from us. Like I really don't think it's that, because they don't really care. Like even Kenny and Rick would stand up there and take their arrows like in bad seasons and just kind of shrug it off, and it's part of the gig. Like they got a great job, right? So I really don't think it was screw our fans, like we don't want to hear from them. I think they just don't, have the most well-run organization, and for whatever reason they like weren't prepared to hold it, and now they're going to start holding it again.
Yeah, it'll be I'm interested to see like where it ends up getting held, and I know that some people were not too thrilled about the McCormick Place setup and all that, so I'm curious to see what they do with it next year. See where they hold it.
I was not. Yeah, I didn't really like that the McCormick Place. It's just too big for White Sox Fest. Like I don't know what the perfect location is. Maybe like Reggie's and everybody crams in. No, I don't know. But it's not as not McCormick Place. They used to have it at the Hilton. That wasn't bad. That was fine.
Yeah, no, that was fine. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if they could do that again. But, quickly, before we move on to some of the players, I wanted to ask you, just in regards to John Schriffen, I did it right again, I think, where he makes note of the fact that, like, he knows, like, that White Sox fans are passionate and that there's lots of blogs and podcasts. Is that a good or a bad thing, Ian? I don't know. He took the job still. So
Yeah.
I think he's probably seen some of my tweets, I think.
Yeah, I would think that just looking at social media, you can tell that there's a loud bunch of people on Twitter and in the blog and stream slash podcast area. So I mean, it's good that he's aware of it. I suppose. I don't imagine anybody at this point is going to really get on him, but we'll see how it goes as the games go. I mean, social media here in Chicago can eat people up if they look at it too much, because you see him go on a block spree like Steve Stone.
Yeah. Well, I just think, I mean, it's also like lends itself to like the beat, right? Like I just think like blogs have always kind of been necessary because lots of outlets in this city like just decide to not cover the White Sox. And look, maybe some of that's rightfully so. Like they do their own numbers. They know who's reading what, right? It was the whole thing behind James Fegan. Like James Fegan was awesome.
Yep.
But if the Athletic determines that like not enough White Sox fans care about reading his awesome content, like, that's what happens, right? I remember during the rebuild, I was writing at Southside Sox and like covering prospects, and like sometimes the Tribune wouldn't even like send somebody to cover the White Sox game. I mean, it's just they've gone through periods of this. Like the Cubs have multiple awesome writers in town, like at different outlets. It's just one of those things. So I think the blogs kind of took over as like the voice for the fans, and we just have a lot more than I think other cities do.
Yeah, 100%. From where I was coming from, like that's kind of how I started the whole thing of what I was doing because nobody was doing it. And, I kind of always felt this way, that the White Sox kind of always got the short end of the stick when it came to coverage from all of the major publications and, national media and everything. So, it doesn't surprise me that there is a community of bloggers and podcasters and streamers that are all dedicated to the White Sox, just simply due to the fact that there is so little coverage from the mainstream media here in Chicago, which is sad, but at the same time, like that's why we're here. So
yeah, I feel like they just got to win, right? If they win, they'll be covered, and it is kind of what it is. So I listen to a lot of sports radio. I know those guys get a lot of criticism at times for, oh, you guys only talk Cubs or whatever. But like when the White Sox are good and interesting, like they talk Sox all the time. Like I've just always kind of thought that was crazy. But like it is what it is. When they're boring, there's other stuff. It's a big city, and it's 24/7 Bears. So
yeah, that was what I was gonna say, is that no matter when you turn on any of the sports radio in this city, you're gonna hear about the Bears for, I don't know, probably 95% of it. So I don't know. At least that's just the way it seems to me. Every time I turn on the radio, it's Bears this, Bears that. Who are they taking with the first pick? Is Justin Fields sticking around? I mean, it's just been like an onslaught for like the last like 9-10 months, just about that particular situation. So speaking of winning, before I forget, I want to congratulate Ozzie Guillen on winning the Venezuelan championship down there with the Tiburones. So that's pretty cool. Nice to see him getting championships still. Maybe he'll end up back in the major leagues at some point. It would be, a nice story for him to make his way back after a while. So we'll see what happens.
I feel like the Major League Baseball would be better with Ozzie, but White Sox post game would be worse, I think.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I like Chuck and Frank and Pods and all the other guys that hop in on that post-game, pre-game show. But without Ozzie, it would definitely be a less exciting product, for sure.
Yeah, he's great at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's rare too, right? That like somebody's like World Series winning manager is now like doing post game. I don't know. I'd just be curious to know like somebody of that impact, like for a franchise, like if that's just like your post game guy in these other cities. I would think no, probably not.
Yeah. I'm going to take 20 seconds here to do something real quick, just because I know that I need to do it, and I don't want to have double audio with your mic. So give me 1 second here. Only with that one, and we will do monitor and output for that one. All right, so Chris Getz made an appearance on Inside the Clubhouse on 670 The Score on Saturday morning. There were a couple of things that he talked about, one of which being the thing that is mentioned in Fangraphs, specifically in the top 27 of Fangraphs, talking about a possible change in the international method that they use to sign players and to bring players in. Do you have any thoughts on that before I pop on Chris's audio on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I hope it's true. Like, I think it was it was welcome, just something to hear, I think, just that. I mean, they need to change the strategy. I think we kind of talked about this the first week that we did this together, right? They'd be holding money for older Cubans instead of spending all their money on teenagers, and it's like something that needs to change. I hope it's something that Chris Getz has definitely recognized and can do something about. I guess my biggest question at this point would be, like, is Marco Patti the guy to do that? And we've talked about his positives and some of the negatives. I don't really know what Marco Patti's philosophy is or what he would truly like to do if he were unencumbered. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, I think we'll touch in future weeks on just the scandal that's going on in the Dominican Republic, and we can see if that's like affected the White Sox at all. They haven't announced any Dominican signings. I was told there are 5 or 6, but I mean, until those things are announced, I don't really know. So, we could go pretty deep on this if we wanted to. We could probably save it for a future episode, but I'm glad David Haugh asked him about it. He kind of dodged it, but, we'll see. There's no reason to not trust Eric Longenhagen if that's what was written.
Yeah. Obviously they haven't released any of the names that were mentioned in that report. I think it was that Hector Gomez that put that up, I believe. So I didn't see any names associated with it, so I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully it's not anything that affects the White Sox, but we shall see. I'll go ahead and bring up that audio.
Now, in regards to our international process, we have converted on some really high-profile players that certainly on our major league club. With some of the adjustments along the way, it's really just an emphasis on some of our pitching. That goes with on the development side as well as acquiring certain pitchers that we feel like we can really help and improve their game. So it's kind of a deeper infrastructure statement and process more than anything. And we've really done well in emphasizing certain things down at our academy and our lower minor leagues to really welcome some of the international players who have the attributes to be successful, down the road in their professional careers.
So I don't know if you heard. Did you hear any of that at all, James? I mean, I know that you heard it live when it was on. Yeah, not anything that's really all that ground shaking, really. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's not really telling you anything, but it's saying that they probably are changing the way they're doing things.
Yeah, and I mean, like David Haugh kind of left him the out, right? Like, I'm glad he asked it, but he asked the Robert thing too. So I think like when you do that, like he'll just answer the Robert thing, and then you're not going to really follow up. We'll find out. I mean, I think there were some changes. I will say, and I don't know if like this part's going to get played at all, but he was I guess very positive, like about Mike Shirley, right? By name, like mentioned him as the director of amateur scouting. I don't think Marco's name wasn't really brought up. So
it was not.
Yeah, right. So that's interesting. And Shirley actually does have like a real title. Marco doesn't. So I don't know. This is just like something I'm keeping an eye on. I don't really know what they're going to do going forward. But I mean, like, changing the strategy. I mean, we've talked about this. Like they probably have at least verbal agreements with kids for like 2027. You know, so I mean, a real change doesn't really take place for a while because a lot of the big boys are committed essentially. You know.
Yeah, it's that whole system, and I don't know if you saw the other tweet that Hector Gomez tweeted out as part of that, as kind of a thread, talking about the possibility of a international draft and just the distrust coming from the locals in the Dominican and Cuba towards the Major League Baseball about going into a draft because they feel like they're gonna lose money, and I'm sure a bunch of things will change with that, but yeah, I don't know. That whole thing is going to take a while to unfold, I think.
I'm kind of stunned that they don't have the international draft. Like, I thought it was going to pass in the last CBA, and the players didn't go for it. But I do think like the mock-up for it was a pretty good deal. And look, it's never going to go back to the old ways. Like, when the Red Sox signed Yohan Moncada, you got $30 million, right? Like, the system is already so hard capped as it is that an international draft, I think, is actually better because I think players will get more money because I think your top players are still going to get the same, right? Like, the most anybody can get is $5 million-ish, like right around there, $5 million. Like, I bet the top, I bet it's similar to the MLB draft, but not quite as much, right? Like, your top couple picks will get $5-6 million, and then everybody else will get paid throughout. You won't have these kids signing for $30,000 necessarily. So, like, I actually think it's better. I do think there's people on the other side, like David Ortiz and others, who say, like, it's fine like this. Kids get to pick their team. That's a big part of it, So, I don't know. I don't know how you stop the rampant corruption because, like, Major League Baseball clearly turns a blind eye to this, and they just kind of pretend like they don't know that it's going on, even though all of their writers are like, oh, yeah, we've talked about it here. We're just, doing this, whatever. It's like, we know what this is. Like, guys are signing at 14, like in their verbal agreements. Everybody knows. So, like, what are we doing? And then they say, oh, well, they really don't sign until signing day. Okay, sure, So
yeah,
it was even as subtle as I know you saw this. Like, MLB.com didn't even release the teams early this year. Like, usually they do their big board where it's like, guy is expected to sign here, expected to sign here. These are the favorites, but it's always that team. They just couch it with that sort of language. Jesse Sanchez didn't even do that this year. Fangraphs and BA did, but MLB Pipeline did not.
Expected for 3 years expected. Like you said, when these kids are, making agreements at 14 years old, and at that point, regardless of what's happened, unless there's been like some catastrophic injury or something, the teams aren't going to renege on that agreement because then that's in bad faith, by them. So they still, do the thing, even though it's 3 years later. So I don't know. The whole thing's just kind of, like you said, it's corrupt. It's not good. But I don't have a solution. The solution that was laid out in the collective bargaining didn't seem terrible to me, but that's not my my life's work or any of that. So
well, and the owners tied the qualifying offer system to it, which is something that I've tweeted about that people, I don't know, like, a lot of people don't care about draft picks, obviously, and like, I understand that, right? But it's not just a second round pick. Like, my point with this is even like the Boris 4, right? Like, only 3 of them, it's Chapman and Snell and Bellinger, and we don't have to worry about the White Sox signing any of these guys, so that that's fine. But like, it does really crater a guy's market, and what I mean by that is just like, if you think Cody Bellinger's worth 6 years and 150, is he also worth 6 and 150 if you have to give up the second rounder and 500K of international space, right? But then the problem with that is like, too, Boris, it's tough to get a pillow deal. So if you were to tell me, Ian, like, oh, well, just sign them for 1 year then, and they can go back in the market. Nobody wants to give up a second round pick for a guy for 1 year. So it really hurts these guys. Like, I think a lot more of these guys should just take the qualifying offer, especially like like a Matt Chapman who's great defensively at third, but he had like a 770 OPS. Like,
Yep.
I don't know that guy's ever going to have an 800 OPS again. Like, would you want your club to give him $100 million right now? Like, this isn't surprising to me at all that these guys aren't signed.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to give a long-term contract to a lot of these guys that are out on the market right now. Snell, Bellinger, Chapman, same thing. Like all three of those guys, I would be very hesitant to give. We were talking earlier today about that Snell deal where he wants $30 million a year over 9 years. Like there is no way I would think about doing that.
Well, you saw, what did the Yankees offer? They offered like 150, like a Rodon type deal, like 150, something like that. Like that seems about right. Like he's awesome, but he doesn't throw that many innings and he's not great. Like, he's got that every other year thing. Yeah, I mean, that's nuts. Like, no. Like even like Cody Bellinger and the Cubs, no. Like, and the problem the Cubs have, and obviously, like, sorry everybody, like it's the the Future Sox podcast, but like if I were a Cub fan, like I'd be afraid of Bellinger because, like, for as good as I think Pete Crow Armstrong is, like, are you gonna pay center field money to have Cody Bellinger play first base? I know they don't want to lose him. I know they haven't done enough, but like I wouldn't be knocking down the door to give him a bunch of money either.
No, me either. It just seems like there is, with the hard hit contact percentage, the hard hit percentage, there's just so much risk there. And I know that they found an issue with his swing about him getting too far out on his front leg and whatever, but I don't trust it. It's certainly not enough to give him $200 million. So one of the other things that Chris Getz was asked about, and this is kind of this is not minor league related, but it's still kind of fun because he was asked about fans and people talking about the ties to Kansas City with almost every single hire that the White Sox have made. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that audio on there, and then we will discuss.
I understand that sentiment. I do, and we're talking about, I spent 2 years there in the front office. Obviously, I had my playing days. There's been some front office members along the way, and obviously Pedro spent some time there. But, man, we look at Josh Barfield and Brian Bannister, Stan Mondry Cohen, and various, Paul Yanish and others. We've got, diversity of thinking is very important. There's also a built-in, trust that you have with people that you worked with before, and really it's blending that all together. Each organization is led by, certainly you've got ownership, you've got a general manager, president, what have you, and, you shape the culture and direction you want to go. You find the people that, have the qualities that you feel like can fit and work towards what you're trying to accomplish. I don't really care where anyone comes from. It could be from the college ranks, could be outside of Major League Baseball, in other sports, and certainly, you grab individuals within our industry that can help you. You've got it's really about establishing who you are, what you want to be, and finding individuals that can carry that out and continue to develop them. So, yeah, everyone has their starter kit and their history, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an evolution. The game changes all the time. If you're not willing to adapt and be aware of what's going to be successful in this game, then you're going to be very limited. But if you can find people that are open-minded and, perhaps they were working in organizations that this was the direction and they were troopers and they were carrying it out a certain way, where you bring them in here with a different direction, fresh mindset, diversity of thought, and you evolve with them. So, it makes it fun having people that you know or don't know and growing relationships, but it doesn't mean that we're just stuck in our ways. We've got a bright group, hardworking, genuine people that I think understand what it takes to connect with players, to grow them, to be the best players that they can be. And that's the mindset. It really is, and regardless of where they come from.
So I find that pretty interesting. I like the way that he put it. Everybody's got their starter kit, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an evolution. We've all obviously taken notice that so many of the people have Kansas City Royals ties. Mm-hmm. Obviously it's very evident, and everybody talks about it. So everybody knows that. what did you think about what he had to say about the Kansas City hirings?
Well, so I do like, he said you kind of wrestle with diversity of thought, but also you want to bring people in that you trust. Like if there's a job that you want to get done, and that resonates with me a little bit. Just what I do with my day job. I'm a special ed coordinator. If I'm ever in a position where I'm hiring and firing, I think I'd probably be accused of the same thing. I'm going to want to bring people in that I can trust to get the job done. So I understand that, but it's just the problem that he has is that the White Sox have been so insular for so long. So it's good that it's outside, but it's also outside from the same place. That's why and we'll see what happens, right? But it does seem like Josh Barfield has a lot of influence. And whether he's good or not, I don't know, right? But he's from the Diamondbacks. There's not really Royals ties there. He brought in Grady Sizemore, and there's some other guys that are on the Barfield side. And then look, you can obviously tie Bannister to the Royals or to Tony La Russa or whatever, a whole bunch of other spots, right? But that's a good hire, I think, right? So it's not all Royals. It's gonna be funny every time it's a Royal, but. You have, we talked a couple weeks ago, right? They got the Royals contract guy. Who cares? That's fine. Now, if you want to complain that they got the Royals director of player personnel, cool. You don't want you'd rather have somebody else than Gene Watson. Totally fair criticism, So I get that part of it. And then obviously I think, the manager, obviously, right? I don't think that Chris Getz thinks this is Mr. Long-term White Sox manager. I think other people might disagree with that, but we'll see. I don't think it's just going to be Royals forever, but I kind of understand it a little bit at the beginning, even if we don't like it that much.
Yeah. He said they obviously did ask him about Pedro as well, and I said something along the lines of he's a very good communicator and he's somebody that likes to improve and is working diligently to get better. We will see. I'm kind of Pedro'd out until he shows me something and doesn't make exasperating decisions. I'm just gonna
I'll never sacrifice a big league win for development, Ian.
That whole thing, super
in a totally lost season,
totally meaningless. But let's go ahead and worry about wins in a 100-loss season.
Let's play Zach Remillard more to try to win baseball games.
All right, so good. All right, so like we talked about earlier, Fangraphs did drop their top 27. Prospects. I'm just why 27.
That's what he does. Eric does 27.
Yeah,
and then he writes about 50 more guys. If your system's good enough. But no, for sure.
Yeah, top 27. So one thing that I did was I took the Fangraphs top 27 because it is public knowledge. Anybody can find it. And what I did was I cross-referenced it with the Baseball America, and I just made a little sheet here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up on the screen here for everybody that is watching on YouTube or Twitch, which is where you can find us on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. every week. There is that. So on the left, you have the Fangraphs ranking 1 through 27. And on the right, you have the Baseball America ranking, which I feel, because of the way I did this right here, it's not giving up proprietary information because it is hard to figure out unless you take a screenshot of it and work it out yourself. So, largely, the top 10, other than number 10, is pretty much all close. Do you have any strong feelings on anything? Let's go 1 through 9.
Yeah. Oh, see, I was going to say Holy Alex Spees Batman was the first thing I was going to say.
We'll get to that.
We had this guy dead to rights, Ian, and now he's throwing 103. We're idiots. Yeah, apparently. We talked about this. I think your top 7 guys are probably going to be the top 7 guys everywhere, like in some order. I think we know 1 and 2. 1 and 2 aren't changing, but there's some diversity of thought. I'll use that again with the rest of these guys, right? And then, you have Cannon and Mena. I think the write-up on Ryan Burroughs was interesting. They were very bullish just on the athletic profile, despite like maybe the raw stats not great. But they think, some of the things he did work out like well for him as a 19-year-old that should stay at shortstop and hit a little bit. So I thought it was interesting to see Burroughs up that high. Jonathan Cannon for me is safe, but like that's a back end righty. I tend to lean towards a little bit more upside than that. So, when my list comes out, if Peyton Pallette and Grant Taylor and those guys with a little bit more juice are right up near him, just don't be surprised, because that's kind of what I look for. But no, I don't think this is terribly surprising.
All right, so for you that are listening on the podcast version of this, rounding out the top 10, we have Colson Montgomery and Noah Schultz leading off, obviously. Brian Ramos and Edgar Caro and Nick Nastrini are the rest of the top 5. Just kind of shuffle those guys in any order in 3, 4, and 5. It seems like everybody has them in a different 3, 4, and 5, but they're all right there. 6 is Jake Eder. 7 is Jacob Gonzalez. Jonathan Cannon is number 9. Christian Mena is number 8. And jumping up to number 10 is Ryan Burroughs. Baseball America has him ranked as number 19. The complex leagues stats that he had last season were not anything that really stood out or would make you take notice. But I'm going to I have not personally gotten eyes on him yet, other than like a couple of swings. So I will defer to other people. And I'm interested in seeing what he brings when I finally do get a chance to see him.
Well, the one good thing, like Eric, lives in Arizona, so he does see like a lot of instructional league. One thing I want to go back to before we continue. So Jacob Gonzalez, obviously, the White Sox had the unfortunate tweet last week where they like unintentionally dumped on this kid for some reason.
Brutal.
And look, I think it's been well documented what you and I thought of this pick, right? But I do think it's unfair to just like write him off totally. It's not what I would have done. It's not the level of upside I want in a first rounder, but like he's a prospect still, guys. Like this is, and the Fangraphs write-up I thought was interesting. It said that he was noticeably bigger. He's already like started to take to a bit of a swing change, which suggests to me that it's something the White Sox talked to him about, and then they sent him to Kannapolis, and they were like, just do what you do. It's fine. Like, we don't care about your numbers. Just to prove that we don't care about him, like, we're going to broadcast him to the world, even though it was an OPS of 5-something. My goodness gracious. But I guess, like, the only thing I would caution is, like, we've heard the negative. He's going to play shortstop at an affiliate, maybe even high A, and just watch him. Like, we'll see. Like, it's not the end of the world. I don't like reading too much into college players' first-year stats. They were really bad. Reports weren't great. But the Instructs reports were a lot better. So if there's only one thing that you do with the Fangraphs write-up, read the Jacob Gonzalez write-up and just bank it away somewhere before like he goes out to an affiliate.
Yeah, this is the thing that I always we talked about this last week, but watching him last year, even at the Cannonballers, I don't have a problem with him playing shortstop. I feel like his abilities as a shortstop and his ability to see what's coming before it's coming to him, I felt like he has a good sense of anticipation. So I didn't really have a problem with that. But what I did say is that I didn't see a whole lot out of the bat. And if you watch a bunch of his old swing from Ole Miss and Team USA, you'll see that he tends to kind of fall out of the box, and that is not going to play when you get these guys with these nasty breaking balls. He's just not going to be able to do that. So there has to be a swing change. And you can say what you want about the decision to draft a guy that you feel like you absolutely have to completely change his swing mechanics as soon as he comes. Like that to me blows my mind. But, we'll see what happens. I mean, the bat to ball in college was fantastic despite goofy mechanics. I'll just put it that way.
Well, yeah, and he's like he's clearly like played shortstop. He played shortstop for Team USA, like despite not being able to run, which is crazy, right? So I think right away it's kind of similar to the Colson Montgomery thing, right? He's too big to play shortstop. Now, I think there's some evidence that maybe he's not the greatest shortstop. But I mean with Gonzalez, it's like, well, he's a 45 grid runner. There's no way he can stay there, even though like he's never really given any indication that he can't.
Right.
Other than the raw foot speed.
Yep. All right. So moving along to, since there's 27, I guess I could have done them in batches of 9. But number 11, we talked about this just a second ago. Alex Spees, not rated by Baseball America at all. And if you look at his numbers, he had with the Rangers, he had a 18 K per 9 just in 3 games that he was in. He did give up 3 runs as well. But number 11 for Alex Spees. What do you
like do you know the backstory here? Because this is like a blind spot for me. So he was gone does he have like an anxiety issue or something? Is that not fair? I feel like there's something. Like he was out of baseball like for a while, and the Rangers they're a good team. They ran out of 40-man space and they let a high upside guy go, I guess, and the White Sox are in position to claim him. I had always kind of knew that he had good stuff, but he does have like a lot of fans in the scouting community. So it doesn't seem like he'll be like one of the first guys off the list. We were or off the 40-man, I should say. So we should probably rethink that one.
I guess so. I know that I always knew, like, when they picked him up, I knew that he had nasty stuff. I just didn't know, like, what his deal was, because he just kind of came out of nowhere and they picked him up, and I was like, okay, all right. And then he's on the 40-man, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, is that worth keeping? But, I mean, if he's throwing 103 and they can manage to harness that, then yes, obviously it would be worth keeping around. We'll see though.
Right. I think it's interesting too that he's right next to Jordan Leisure, who is a guy that I think a lot of people feel like maybe could be the White Sox 8th inning guy in Chicago this year. So, if he's similar to Jordan Leisure, like, yeah, maybe Alex Spees is a guy that we need to keep an eye on, apparently.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and go 12 to 20 here. Jordan Leisure is at number 12. Peyton Paulette, Shane Drowan, Kai Bush, Calvin Harris, not rated on the Baseball America, but he comes in at number 16 from Fangraphs, catcher out of Old Miss. Wilfred Veras at 17. George Wolkow at number 18. Grant Taylor at number 19. And number 20 is Sean Burke.
Yeah, so I think that's more realistic for Burke. We kind of talked about that last time, just with the shoulder injury. That's probably closer to where I'll have him, down around the 20s. I think Grant Taylor's being undersold a little bit, but look, he probably needs to pitch. I don't think it's out of the question that Grant Taylor gets back on a mound and he's 10, because of the upside there. But I mean, if this is, people want to kind of slow play this, like, I get it. And then Wolkow, obviously, Baseball America has him much higher than Fangraphs, but I think Baseball America had him at as a top 60 player in the draft class, right? So that's why. I mean, right, like they kind of carry over their draft rankings, and they had him ranked like pretty highly in last year's draft class.
I will say, I watched the Combine, on MLB Network. I know most people think that's insane that you would actually watch that, but I watched that, and I watched George Wolkow when they had him on MLB Network, and they were kind of highlighting his outfield work and showing his swing. And I was bullish on him, when I was watching him on the MLB Combine. So the fact that we got him where we did And to see him at number 12 in Baseball America doesn't surprise me. 18, maybe, you know, I would bump him up a little bit higher just because of the age, but and the potential. But you know, I can't hate on number 18. I guess. I mean, it's still, you know, top 30.
Yeah, you split the difference and say that he's 15, right? And I think that's fine. I mean, I just think like, yeah, you're right. I mean, even like $1 million for that guy is a gamble that's totally worth it. I mean, he might be nothing, or he might take off and like it could be like one of the steals of the draft class. I mean, you know, like if you would have told me like they had to do it in round 3 and it was going to cost like $2.5 million plus for George. I mean, that's like a little bit steep, right? But for $1 million, I mean, that kid's willing to forego college and sign for $1 million bucks. Like, great job on Mike Shirley and his staff.
100%. All right. So, anything else stand out to you? Does the Calvin Harris at number 16? Does that strike you as odd, as he's not rated at all by Baseball America, and he's at number 16?
No, I mean, my guess is that, again, like Baseball America didn't have him ranked that highly, like in their draft prep, and I'm guessing Longenhagen saw him in instructs and liked it and liked what he saw. And I mean, I know like Calvin Harris can swing it from both sides. I know he doesn't have a ton of experience at catcher, but I mean, if he's like a, you know, decent enough bat, I mean, he's a prospect because they don't have any catchers, so.
Yeah, I don't mind him being up there. I just was surprised considering that, you know, you don't see him ranked, you know, that highly anywhere else. So this was kind of a little bit shocking for me. So 21 through 27. Number 21 comes to Seth Keener. 22 is Jacob Burke. Number 23 is Tanner McDougal. Javier Mogollon is at number 24. Maximo Martinez, not rated by Baseball America, comes in at number 25. At number 26 comes Eric Adler, also not rated by Baseball America. And then newly signed Eduardo Herrera comes in at number 27. He's ranked at number 24 by Baseball America. Anything of interest there?
Yeah, I mean, Mogollon is super interesting. I mean, you know, we'll see if we can get anything out of the Arizona League with him this year, obviously. I mean, Jacob Burke plays like his hair's on fire, right? I think that guy's a double-A. And yeah, right? And like he's going to be at double-A, so that's interesting. I know you're a Tanner McDougal guy. We talked about him last time. Longenhagen ranked Maximo Martinez. I think he didn't rank him, but he's written about him the last 2 cycles with the Dodgers. So that's a guy that he kind of likes. That's, you know, he was one of the guys, him and Aldrin Bautista, the White Sox traded international bonus pool space for, and they're both 2 young, like real pitching prospects. So, you know, it wasn't like they traded that money for nothing. So those guys are interesting. And then Eric Adler, just another high leverage relief type that walked way too many guys in college, that if he can command it in the minors, he could be in the big leagues this year, because there's really no reason to hold relievers back in the minors when you're horrible. So.
Yeah, I know guys like Beefloaf say that there is no such thing as a pitching prospect. Either you can get people out or you can't. So, you know, if he can manage to figure out his command, I have absolutely no problems with that. Yeah, Maximo Martinez, still an unknown entity for me. Haven't seen him, you know, haven't gotten my eyes on him. We did see Aldrin Batista pitch for the Cannonballers, and he looked pretty decent. Looking forward to his second season.
Yeah, Martinez has not left the complex, so I'm guessing he'll be in Kannapolis to start. I would hope, at least.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we didn't see much of Seth Keener either last year. He just got a couple of appearances, you know, as the season was winding down last year. Not really, you know. Tanner McDougal, you know my feelings on him. Love the makeup and the things that he can do. We'll see. He was not at in Arizona recently for those, so haven't heard anything about him yet. But we will see what he looks like coming to spring training.
The interesting thing about Keener, he's another guy that threw a lot of relief innings in college that they think can start. So my guess is there's some sort of innings cap. So we'll, you know, it's not like he's not coming off Tommy John like some of these other guys, but I just don't know like how careful they're going to think that they need to be with a guy who they are very confident can start, but just doesn't really have the innings base because he pitched at Wake Forest and they used him out of the bullpen.
Speaking of guys on innings limits and pitcher health in general, did you happen to see that tweet I put out about Norge Vera's workout routines?
Yes. Best shape of his life.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, if we see him healthy, I'm interested to see what he can do. But at the same time, I don't know what to expect from him at all. And he's completely dropped off of every list.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see, I guess, what ends up coming of Norge Vera. It looks so promising out of the gate, but 2 years in a row now where we haven't gotten much from him at all. So we'll see.
No, and his stuff backed up, and he's been hurt, right? So me and Mike used to kind of talk about this all the time, and I'd like to ask you, at this point, do you think you just salvage the signing and try to turn him into a short reliever, or do you let him keep starting even though he doesn't have the in it? Because you would think, right, okay, the stuff backed up a little bit and he's hurt a lot. Okay, well, can you get the high impact stuff back in shorter stints? Is that better? Hey, maybe he could be a setup guy. Is that better than the dream of him being a number 2 starter when he doesn't have that innings load? I don't know. I mean, I think you let guys start until they prove that they can't, but I mean, with him, it's a $1.5 million signing out of Cuba. He's not super young still. So, I mean, maybe that's a bullpen guy and you get something out of him. I don't know. I'll be curious to see how they use him.
Yeah, I don't know what to say one way or the other. I'd say if he shows the promise of being able to eat up multiple innings, go ahead and give him to him. But, if you don't feel that, the development, side of things, if they don't feel that they can hand him the ball for, if they feel that he's fragile, why bother trying to even have him start? You try and get something out of it at this point. And I don't know whether it's going to be starting or whether it's going to be relieving, but we will find out.
Yeah. So look, when we do our top 30 at FutureSox, I usually do a just missed where I go to 50. He'll probably be on that. So,
at least he'll make some list.
31 to 50 somewhere in there. So, and Southside Sox does a top 100 prospects thing somehow. And I always joke with Brett Ballantini, how do you guys go to 100? Nobody knows who any of these guys are. I'm sure he'll make that one too.
Yeah, he'll make that one. I mean, there's no top 100. There's no way he can't make that list because there's only 4 teams. And
I know.
AAA usually has a bunch of 30-year-olds on it, so they're not going to be on the top list. So you got anything else for this week?
No, nothing immediate other than, so the Dylan Cease stuff I think was a little bit interesting. Look, I feel like we're just going to keep talking about Dylan Cease, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I found interesting, so Bruce Levine, obviously, and there's context here, right? I've done my fair share of beating up on Bruce Levine over the years for stuff that I thought was questionable that he's saying as the main baseball insider for the radio station, okay? But Bruce Levine is super tight with White Sox director of player personnel Gene Watson. He's always kind of known Jerry Reinsdorf a little bit. So when Bruce Levine says there's a 0% chance that Dylan Cease is making the opening day start for the White Sox, I kind of listen to that. I think that's a little bit interesting because this stuff's tough to read. You see John Heyman and all these other people that say, the White Sox can't connect with the Yankees and the Orioles because they're, the prospect cost and whatever, right? You never know how to read that stuff and what it actually means. So I don't know. But then Bob Nightingale comes out today and says that the Mariners and White Sox are in talks for Cease. So how serious is that? I don't know. But that's another team into the Derby. I do like that it's Seattle, not necessarily because I love that system, but because Trader Jerry, baby. You need one of these GMs that's not afraid to make a deal. And Jerry DiPoto might be that person.
Yeah, between the Mariners and the Phillies, there's always a chance that there can be a major deal with a bunch of prospects attached to it. And I don't know. Yeah, Jerry DiPoto loves to wheel and deal, so we'll see. I mean, if he's willing to give up a decent amount of stuff that's relatively close and some stuff that might have some promise in the future as well. I don't see why it couldn't happen, but it is not the Orioles. And, so all those guys that, the 5 names that everybody's learned, over the last 3 months are going to be useless. So
Mike Elias is keeping them all, even though they're all 25-year, whatever. I don't know. It's crazy. But
25-year-old middle infielders.
Do you have a preference? Have you watched West Coast Seattle Mariners baseball? It said specifically what Bryce Miller and Brian Wu. Wu's younger.
But you're not going to get both, right? Yeah.
No. Yeah. So they were both pretty good, and they both have 6 years of control. So I think one of them plus some prospects, I think makes some sense. So we'll see. And I guess some people ask why it made sense for Seattle. I think just having Luis Castillo and Kirby and Cease in the front of your rotation, if your offense isn't great, makes some sense for them, right? So yeah, I think it's interesting because we've been doing this Mike Elias thing this whole off season where it's this guy's just not gonna pull the trigger on a trade, and the Yankees aren't in a great spot to trade their top guys. So yeah, I mean, this might be the lifeline that we needed. We'll see if Bruce Levine's right and Dylan Cease gets moved before opening day. But I think at this point, if we had to bet, I'm just gonna assume he's here at this point because it's pretty late and there's a lot of free agents available still.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I could see a couple of guys coming. I don't get to watch a ton of PCL baseball, so I don't get to see a bunch of the older guys. Plus, they play. I think they're in the Texas League for their younger guys, so I don't get to watch a whole lot of that. But what I do know is that if you're going to get a Cole Young or a Wu, you're definitely not getting Harry Ford from them. They are not letting him walk, and I kind of doubt that they're also letting Cole Emerson walk either. You're either going to get Young or Emerson.
I think Emerson's a top 50 prospect in baseball by midseason.
It's possible.
What is he right now? He was awesome out of high school last year. So, but I do think looking at their list, there's a couple of recent international signings. There's the outfielder Gonzalez. So look, they have some names. I know Dominic Canzoni is one of their big league outfielders that is probably familiar with Josh Barfield. Or familiar to Josh Barfield. So, it might not be all prospects. I would think though, with names out there, if it happens, it'll be fairly soon. Otherwise, it's probably not going to happen because whenever you see names like this, it's usually either something that happens quickly or doesn't happen at all, as was evidenced with those Cincinnati Reds talks and rumors where all those names were dumped in and then it just kind of didn't happen.
And then it fizzled. Yeah, I would see Gabriel Gonzalez definitely trying to be a part of that deal for the White Sox side. But then again, he's advanced A, so he'll probably be starting at Double A this year. I don't know if that's going to be close enough for Getz, but I mean, hopefully, this is one thing that I have had kind of an issue with of people arguing that the White Sox need to get somebody that is major league ready right now, and I'm of the opinion that they need to get the highest upside available. I don't, obviously I don't want them to be rookie ball or A ball, but Double A works for me. So
yeah, totally agree. And I thought. And look, I just, when they, you've seen the people that are they're targeting pitching in return, right? I don't even think that's necessarily true. I think he wants 2 premium prospects of what he deems, and who knows, that could be anything. We could go on for days about what that means, right? And then probably 2 other pieces, one interesting, one maybe not, in a 4-for-1. And, we've seen these trades before, right? So I think when somebody meets it, they'll make the deal. And I'm afraid of Dylan Cease starting the season, but it's not the worst case scenario taking him to the trade deadline.
Yeah, no, I'd be fine with it. So are you looking forward to a San Francisco 49ers Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl, as we have found out that is what we are looking at?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that. Patrick Mahomes is absolutely insane. Like, just like looking at the numbers and obviously, right? Like, duh. But I mean, he's like 14-3 in the playoffs, and he's like been in the league for like what, 7 years? He's 6 AFC title games. It's just absurd. Like, even like I heard today, like, all the sharp bettors, right, were on the Ravens because the Ravens were like a top 5 DVOA team, like, of all time. And I'm just like, you're gonna give me Patrick Mahomes and points? Like, it just seems it seemed insane then, and it seems even crazier now.
That was one heck of an epic collapse by the Ravens. I don't think I've ever seen. There was one down where just running around in the backfield with the ball. I'm just Lamar Jackson. It's just running around in the backfield in the fourth quarter, and I'm like, are you going to throw it? Are you going to run? Are you going to do something with it? He was literally behind the line of scrimmage for like 15 seconds, and then ended up getting sacked for like 4-yard loss. They still ended up getting the first down, but what an awful, epic collapse that was, and I did not enjoy that very much at all. I don't care about Taylor Swift. Yes, even she's making it her way onto this podcast / stream. I have no worries about her being there at all. But I did want to see somebody different other than the Chiefs, and but I'm still happy that Detroit lost. They can they can go somewhere else. I don't want to see anything from Detroit on any championship game.
And I think they're gonna lose their offensive coordinator here in about 2 days too. So, oh well.
Entirely possible. FutureSox.net. You can find all the written content. You can find this stream over there on a widget. You can also find this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can find this on twitch.tv /FutureSox. You can find all of our videos on YouTube as well. FutureSox on Twitter. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox on Twitter. My co-host, James Fox, on the other side, James Fox 917. And we thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us. We thank you for listening. We appreciate you all. Until next week, we will see you guys next week at 8 o'clock on Sunday next week.